Creamer Media's Polity, I'm Sashnee Moodley. Researcher and analyst, Professor Raymond Suttner, joins me for Suttner's View, a weekly commentary on South Africa's political scene. Welcome, Professor.
Thank you.
Why is there controversy surrounding Human Rights Day, a day that we should be celebrating?
I think it goes back to before democracy, and some people who were not around then will not know of the enmity that there used to be between the ANC and the PAC around Sharpeville. It goes back to a sense that the PAC has that the ANC is appropriating a day that is their day, and that they are marginalizing the memory of Robert Sobukwe, things like that. One of the reasons why it's controversial and why the ANC has also got its own irritation is that Sharpeville happened in a month when the ANC was preparing a campaign against the past laws. And what they say is that the PAC jumped the gun. They didn't do any preparation, and that they came in just on that day and really tried to create drama instead of building organization. So there's historical enmity over that period, but when the massacre at Sharpeville occurred, ANC also mourned, declared a day of mourning, and people burnt their passes. There are these famous photographs of Luthuli burning his pass, Mandela and Sisulu. I remember this picture of, I think it's Sisulu burning the pass, and you see the pass going like in a bit of flame, a bit like a dynamite fuse. And it relates to also to whether sufficient credit is being given to all the movements that contributed to the liberation of South Africa. I remember on Radio Freedom how Thabo Mbeki once said, the PAC mustn't expect us to carry them on our back to the battlefield. See? So, the ANC used to mock the PAC, the PAC's fighting amongst themselves and things like that, which the ANC is now doing itself. But there was a sense that people had that the PAC was in disarray for a lot of the time. But I think what we've got to remember is that you can't measure the power of a movement and the power of an idea merely by how many votes that party gets in elections in 2017 or whatever it is. There are a lot of people who are supporters of Africanism who may not have gone and voted PAC, because Africanism as an idea, African pride, African respect for legacies and heritages and things like that is something that is important for all of us to value, and I think it is also part of the ANC's heritage. There's a famous speech by Pixley Kaisaka Seme in Columbia University in 1906, where he refers to where Africans come from, what their history is long before whites colonized, so that the PAC may not be strong politically, but it does speak into elements of African self-assertion, self-pride, and pride in their personal identity. And I think it's important that we debate this, because identities are not static. We look at that past, but we don't look at it as if it must be interpreted unchanging in the present. But it's not only the PAC who complains. The Black Consciousness Movement obviously complain, and I'm sure they were not very happy with Zuma opening a monument to Steve Biko at King Williamstown. There was something there before. When I went down about 2 years ago, there was something at the cemetery, but now they've erected something bigger. And I think they feel what the ANC has done since 1994, it's appropriated their symbols, their people. But we must remember, however, that many of the ANC leaders do come from a black consciousness background. People like Terry Lakota, he's no longer in the ANC. He went to Robben Island as a black consciousness person. Many of these other people, Bonnie Pityana, Sipho Pityana, Frank Chikane, a lot of these people were actually from a black consciousness background. And people feel there's not enough respect done and the records don't adequately reflect their history. Now, I think it's important that the histories of all the people who contributed should be written up. There was the series called the South African Democracy Education Project, SUDIT, multi-volume, and it does have a lot on black consciousness and PAC. In fact, the person who took over from Ben Magubane was himself from a black consciousness background. So I think those are some of the reasons, and I think it is also related to the way in which the day is commemorated becomes, in the eyes of many people, party political, whereas it should be a way of unifying all the people of South Africa. So those are some of the reasons.
And what of the human rights entitled to South Africans? Are they adequately observed?
You see, South Africa fought a battle against apartheid, which was, in essence, a rights-denying political, social and legal system. And we didn't just end that with declarations about what would happen in the future. We now have a constitution which puts at the center not just what is called first-generation rights, right to freedom of movement, freedom of expression, that's called first-generation rights. It also has second-generation and maybe third-generation rights, that is socio-economic rights and developmental rights. For example, the Constitution declares that you have a right to have your basic social needs met. Now, in the case over social grants, the Constitutional Court referred to the social grants as a very big achievement in post-apartheid South Africa in realizing the meeting of basic needs of people as required in the Constitution. But the judge said, unfortunately, we are not here to celebrate that. And what they were saying really is that by not providing these rights, even though there are the resources to do it, you see, with social and economic rights, you can't always say they must be provided immediately. Like you can immediately say that must be free from anyone attacking me. That's immediately realizable. But you can't always say that schools must be built where there's not even a foundation by tomorrow. Some things must be realized in accordance with socio-economic development. Now, in the case of the social grants, the resources were there. They've been there all the time, but there has been a misappropriation or misallocation, a failure to allocate, a failure to meet needs where the resources were there, and there was a failure to meet them, not because it was impossible, not because of an act of nature or some such thing, but because of a failure to apply their minds diligently and with the care required to meet the needs of the most vulnerable people in the country. So socioeconomic rights in other respects, housing, healthcare, water, you can only meet needs insofar as you have the resources, and what is possible in 2017 was not possible in 1917. And I think we can say that what we do have the capacity to do is not being done, that there are very many people without adequate shelter, schools with pit toilets where young kid dies falling into it, things like this which shouldn't be happening. And I'm not saying nothing has been done. There's a lot that has been done. But in recent years, with the growth of corruption, diversion of public funds and things like that, many of these things are not being used for the purposes that they're intended or adequately administered. On the level of first generation rights, there's also a problem in the sense that we have a high degree of lawlessness in this country, high degree of violence, a lack of trust in the police services. You have the head of the Hawks removed because he's dishonest and hasn't got integrity, and it's being appealed by the minister, and it doesn't seem that that is going to succeed. So that there's a lot of problems, not at every level. And it's very sad in the sense that many people fought long and hard to have the freedoms that are entrenched in our Constitution, to even realize the basic freedoms in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights or the Freedom Charter. But these are rights now that they're entitled to under the law, and they are not getting them. So there is a problem.
Thanks for speaking with us, Professor.
Okay.
That was Professor Raymond Suttner speaking to Creamer Media's Polity about whether human rights are honoured in South Africa today.